Hi, this is Brian Venton and welcome to another My Town Media opinion piece. In late December I wrote and posted an opinion piece on local council reform. In this video I want to focus on reforms to the Local Government Association of Queensland called the LGAQ. The LGAQ's stated mission is about advocacy. However, its actions and relationships raise pressing questions about transparency, accountability and conflicts of interest. These concerns, in my view, warrant a critical review of the LGAQ's role and the frameworks governing its operations. First is the issue of LGAQ's political mandate. The LGAQ is a not-for-profit entity. Their website says our members, that is, local councils, trust us to deliver support from the mayor to the most junior employee. And whilst they owe their existence to local councils, I suggest they have morphed into becoming an unelected pseudo-political entity that has grown to functions as a quasi-fourth tier of government in Queensland. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but careful research reveals its influence extends way beyond what we might think of as benevolent advocacy. On the one hand, it actively shapes and drives policy for councils, but on the other hand can engage directly with the state government. Interestingly, that concentration of power is not mandated by the Local Government Act 2009 and enables it to fall outside the reach of normal accountability structures that councils themselves are accountable to by mandate. This lack of political mandate, in my view, is problematic and needs to be addressed. Then second, there is the issue of conflicts of interest between legal representation and council advocacy. A critical area of concern is the relationship between the LGAQ, its legal representatives and local councils. For instance, the LGAQ's legal affiliations with firms such as Clayton Utz and King & Co. create a potential conflict of interest. These firms represent both the LGAQ and individual councils, including in disputes involving elected officials, such as the Townsville suspended Mayor Troy Thompson. And whilst the LGAQ says they exist to support all levels of councils, from the mayor to the most junior employee, it begs the question of whose interests these firms prioritise and whether the LGAQ's advocacy aligns with the needs of all member councils or serves a selective agenda. It's becoming increasingly evident based on the Townsville Council's experience that there are genuine concerns in respect to conflict of interest issues. Then third, there's the issue of advocate fairness. Whilst the LGAQ claims to advocate for all 77 member councils, its actions appear to suggest otherwise. The organisation's public statements and legal associations, at least in the Townsville circumstance, seem to favour council administrations over elected representatives. For example, the LGAQ's apparent lack of public support for Mayor Thompson, despite concerns about procedural fairness in his suspension, highlights a troubling disparity in its advocacy. If the LGAQ's mission is to support councils holistically, it must clarify how it balances these conflicting interests, especially when there are conflicts between duly elected public officers and the administrations they seek to lead. Does their advocacy extend to picking a side in matters of dispute? If it does, then it raises heaps of other potential legal questions. Then fourth, there is the issue of public scrutiny. The LGAQ is actively engaged in driving policy for and on behalf of councils up and down the line, yet the public is not being informed of the nature of those policies, nor the motives driving those policies, nor their intended impacts. There appears to be a veil of secrecy behind much of what the LGAQ does across multiple fronts. At the 2024 annual conference held last October, I understand that approximately 114 policy positions were adopted by participating member councils, yet none of those policy positions have been made public in any formal document by the LGAQ for public consultation or scrutiny. Yet many of those policy positions will become action points leveraged against the state by the LGAQ without any consultation between member councils and their constituents. All of this is happening behind the scenes, and as far as I can see, without any public awareness. And that secrecy, to my mind, is troubling. Then fifth, there is the issue of the LGAQ's relationship with the state government itself. The LGAQ's influence now extends to having a formal agreement with the state government outlined in a document called the Partners in Government Agreement. This 8-page document extends to February 2026, obligating the government and all its departments to formally consult with the LGAQ on any matter affecting councils. It also obligates the Premier to meet with the LGAQ at least twice a year and provide at least 4 weeks' notice of any impacting legislation. Now, this level of institutionalised influence raises concerns about fairness and impartiality, particularly when disputes arise between councils and their elected officials. Questions here need answering: whether conversations have been held between the LGAQ and the Premier in relationship to the disputes surrounding the suspended Townsville Mayor and the council administration. Now, given the nature of this agreement, it's highly likely discussions have taken place. So where do we go with all of this? In my view, member councils of the LGAQ should be demanding answers in regards to the matters that I've raised in this opinion piece. I suggest mayors and the administrations they lead may also need to evaluate whether they have unconsciously and unnecessarily so acquiesced their independence under the Act to an unaccountable entity, and they may need to consider withdrawing their support from the LGAQ. Now, the LGAQ openly states that membership is voluntary, which means if member councils decide to withdraw their support, the entity would most likely cease to exist. Some believe that outcome might not be a bad thing. Equally, the state government must critically assess these issues and consider what reforms to the LGA Act need to be pursued to ensure a more equitable representation exists for all stakeholders. Clearly, there are issues that need to be addressed. Then, of course, the public needs to get involved and start pressing into how they are being impacted by the operations of the LGAQ and the broader agenda of not just advocacy, but influence and control. Now, I hope you found this opinion piece helpful. As a conversation starter, thanks for watching, and remember, the things that appear are not always as they seem. Bye.